I've been here for 35 years, and I remember the Senate Radio TV gallery in the old days. It was the size of the Vent Studio.
Okay,
It was so tiny.
well, what they built on Capitol, this is all of a sudden huge amount of space is open. So,
But Larry, at the time, didn't ask for space
so,
for the Senate Radio TV gallery.
in my opinion, they should take one of the SBC rooms, one of the big SBC rooms and turn it into a TV studio.
Yep.
But that's the,
Who won out in that on the Senate side
Okay.
was the Senate recording studio. He immediately jumped on it and said, I want this. He has a palatial kingdom.
Well,
I've never seen it.
I wish I had that space.
sounds
And I've got lots of space.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, but then
You barely need to use the B&C studios.
Yeah, yeah, those are for exclusives. And then the B is for print people. If they want to invite to the studio.
oh, perfect.
Can't let them do
Make sure we
video,
go.
but they can invite to that studio and have exclusively print for.
Oh, okay, I always thought that was like overflow and things they just put in, if you have multiple events, one small and big.
Sometimes that's the case, but mostly if it's a.
Is it one of those
Compressor, you
Yeah,
can't get in by
No,
live TV,
yeah.
but it's a regional story that the print people are interested in.
Yeah.
That's it. We're here to accommodate the
I
members.
learned a lot of new stuff.
Yeah, yeah, we're here to accommodate them. Damn. Do you know anything about that? 'Cause
Yeah,
I mean, I'm thinking of Spain. I really like
She's below, she's below. She's below there.
Yeah, and there's something fundamental about the saying that becoming.
There's my box.
It's great.
On the positive
He
side,
literally
there's
came
so
to her.
many fewer chairs. it's
We
easier
found a
to move
bird's
around.
nest up here,
Yeah.
and that's
No,
what
I think I would trade for business.
he walks
as usual.
around and then he gets on the furniture and looks up.
Yeah. Left hand doesn't worry about blocking. Just got the other camera.
He's one of those.
I'm not saying Sony doesn't make it good.
But I think overall, I'd rather things be normal, wouldn't go through the.
Not cost effective for me. Not all, not
Keep us
so much.
busy in the normal days.
And I won't.
It's just busting around. I think like, this person, all my really, all the different people. So, I was thinking of starting here, how we place everything, also, we have put in like 10,000.
See, this is a good idea.
So you really don't go for it?
Yep.
You're not going to
Oh, no, I didn't know, not excited about it at first. I thought you were talking about that.
Before you get started, can you please make sure everyone's cell phones are silenced?
Oh. I think it should have a.
It's just that it's like, yeah, I left my phone put out for like an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I worked one time.
He also wanted
last week, and I got paid like $665. But,
I gotta get that.
it's good. It's like $2,000. Yeah.
You go get your usual.
Show it to it.
It's always surreal.
Come back as it gets
What's
started.
that?
Show it to it.
Yeah.
No.
Although she'll still manage to look this way. It's not really here.
Try again. I don't have this. I applied for PCT, I just got the medal.
Did you? I did not apply.
Yep, stealing. Seriously.
And they get lost.
3:30 live show. This is gonna be complicated. Cause I mean, if you were on time, that wouldn't be a problem.
We have a 3:30?
Yeah.
That's in 22 minutes.
You know, she's gonna come like at 3:18.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's true.
And she'll be for 10 minutes in the wait stand.
Uh-huh.
Like, seriously, you care, do it.
Good luck, though.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Huh?
Goodbye, print recorders.
Yeah.
Don't have any problems.
Oh, exactly.
Manu, just do it on Zoom like this from here.
It should.
No, why not?
Yeah, we do have the, I got the live view app on my phone.
You can go live from anywhere.
Exactly.
I pitched that to you first, because that was my first thought, was like, why are we gonna go take it upstairs if it's gonna ultimately be stupid?
People on the computer. Oh. That's what she tried to do last week. That's the only reason I'm saying that. Yeah. I know, but like, but we should have. Butts in seats, people.
Hey. Yeah, yeah, we're definitely good stuff. No, we don't know that yet. No. No, we just don't know. We don't know. Not necessarily. That could be, you know,
Not necessarily.
it could be, gibberish, you know, people's relations and stuff. But, yeah. Corn I don't think so. I mean, look at the monitor, right? It would be like that anymore. I mean, the extra question. That was that. Yeah, and like he's also, yeah, but I think it's beyond that. It's an investigation into, you know, weakness in this area. No, in fact, I think that if anything, yeah,
2 minutes. Thanks.
Game time.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Here we are in kind of a new arena. So thank you. I hope you're all. And now when I call my colleagues, I say, how are you? That used to be sort of a turn of phrase, and now it is a question. How are you? If you're well, come here for Friday. If you're not, stay home. Thanks for not sharing. This is really quite an exciting time for us because we have a monumental need for our country at this sad time. You know the figures. Nearly 85,000 people tragically dead. Nearly 1.4 million people infected. More than 36 million people have lost their jobs and filing for unemployment. Yesterday, Chairman of the Fed, Chairman Powell, he stated the need for Congress to act immediately and pass further economic relief. In his words, he said, additional fiscal support could be costly, but worth it if it helps avoid long-term economic damage and leaves us with a stronger recovery. That's our hope. This trade-off is one for our elected representatives who wield powers of taxation and spending. Chairman Powell of the Federal Reserve Bank. Also, representatives of calling for urgent action are the representatives of the Cleveland Federal Reserve Bank, the Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank, the Dallas Federal Reserve Bank. And this morning, as you probably have seen, Dr. Rick Bright testified at the Health Subcommittee on Energy and Commerce Committee, warning that next winter will be the darkest winter in modern history unless we do more to fight the coronavirus. So the challenge is a clear one, and we are very proud of the HEROES Act, which addresses the urgent needs and the actions we want to take to meet those needs. The House will vote on the HEROES Act tomorrow. And it has 3 pillars. The first pillar is to, again, open the economy by science, which calls, and health experts who call for testing, tracing, treatment, and isolation. Do that. And in the package put together by largely the Energy and Commerce Committee with the Mr. Chairman Frank Pallone, assistance to hospitals, all that goes into that. It has a strategic plan for testing, tracing, treating, and isolating. It's what this country needs to defeat the COVID-19 virus. Secondly, honor our heroes. That's the title of our bill, the HEROES Act. The healthcare workers, the first responders, police, fire, emergency services, sanitation, food workers, our teachers, transportation workers, and the rest. The list goes on. Many of them risk their lives to save lives, and now they may lose their jobs because of the coronavirus and the cost that it is to their communities. First, open the economy, test. 2, we want to honor our heroes by helping state and local entities. And 3, we want to put money in the pockets of the American people. We're doing that with direct payments to American families, with unemployment insurance, with child tax credit, low-income tax credit, employment retention tax credit, a number of different ways. And this, until it is necessary, not necessary anymore, this is the path that we have to be on. All of the things that I have just mentioned have their origin, their provenance. They have been voted upon by the Congress in one or the other of the 4 coronavirus pieces of legislation. So there's nothing really new in what I had to say. The size and the strategy of it more emphasized, but not anything that we haven't voted on before. In addition to that, we want to help the Postal Service. We want to have a strong OSHA provision to protect our workers and to protect our employers. And we want to have more money for our election vote by mail initiatives. And one other piece that is sort of old and new again is the assistance that we want to have for our renters and for the homeowners who are seriously finding themselves at the mercy of. So we want forbearance for mortgage, for mortgages. So that's essentially what the bill is in that way. Now let me just characterize it for you, because people said, oh, it's just partisan. Wait a minute. The first CARES Act was written by the Senate Republicans, the majority leader of the Senate. He introduced the bill. We acted upon it. We came up with a bipartisan bill, the CARES Act. The second, the interim bill for PPP was written by the Senate Republican leader. He introduced it. We had suggestions. We negotiated. We acted upon it. And we had a bipartisan bill. So it's no different when the leader in the House, a Democrat, writes a bill and says, here's many of the issues, more than 80% of the bill we have already passed in one way, shape, or form. We have a few more things, more than 80, well over 80%. So now we're putting our offer on the table. We're open to negotiation, and so when people say partisan, it's like, wait a minute, it wasn't partisan when they did it. Did you say that? And we're saying, okay, here's our offer. Let's see where you are. You have supporting our heroes with state and local support before. You have supported testing, and the very first bill we passed on March 4th, and the very most recent bill that we passed with $25 billion in testing, as you later agreed to. You have supported direct payments to the American people and support for unemployment insurance, et cetera. So these are just taking us further down the path on most of that legislation. In case you're curious, I want to just say that I sent this letter to my colleagues actually just now. And in the letter, I thank all of them, Democrats and Republicans alike, for their interest and leadership in helping meet the needs of the American people. I tell them about Chairman Powell's statement about the urgency of acting and our elected representatives' role that they must play at this time in order to avoid further economic downturn. And I also say to them that this is not new, that one side of the aisle might put something on the table, as they did in the two previous bills, and now we're putting ours and invite negotiation. What I just also tell them is that they can, in preparation for the vote on the floor, I want to encourage them to consult the resources on the HEROES Act prepared by the Committee of Jurisdiction, including state-by-state estimations of the State Fiscal Stabilization Fund and the resources on relief provisions for your district and state prepared by the Appropriations Committee. Do we have a slide? I urge you to support this life-serving legislation and to be present on Friday. If you go to speaker.gov, to our friends who may be watching, if you go to speaker.gov or to our friends who are in this room, you can see this letter, and also it will cite a place that you can go, say what congressional district who your representative is or what district you live in, certainly what state you live in, and see how your community is directly affected. We have two tranches. The first tranche, in no particular order, the recognition of the role that the states play in honoring our heroes, and that will be what goes to the state. And then in terms of county and municipalities, it is also visible there. I think you'll be very pleased. I also think it is important to note that the enthusiasm that we have received for the legislation. The National Association of Counties, for the first time, they are discreetly mentioned to get specific resources. The National League of Cities, the U.S. Conference of Mayors. The list is a long one, very long. If you ask, I'll tell you who's on here, but it's a very long list of organizations. The National Governors Conference, Governor of Maryland and New York put out a statement supporting this part of the bill, the honoring our heroes, state and local, a part of the legislation. So we're very pleased about how that is all going. So here we are, a day before, a lot else going on, but for us, this is our focus. Now, as I said, the 4 previous bills were all overwhelmingly bipartisan, and we hope that this one will be too. Sadly, though, Leader McConnell said, we have not yet felt the urgency of acting immediately. That time could develop, he said, but I don't think it has yet. He wants us to just pause. He wants us to just pause. But families know that hunger doesn't take a pause. Not having a job doesn't take a pause. Not being able to pay the rent doesn't take a pause. The hardship of it all, losing a loved one or having someone in your family sick, it just doesn't take a pause. So members of the Congress, the House and Senate, need to come together. We have to come together to pass another bill, the HEROES Act, and deliver the relief that our families desperately need. And so American people know, as I always say of them, American people have hearts full of love. They want us to work together. We're all heartbroken over the loss of life. The numbers of loss of life, infection, losing jobs, etc., are unimaginable. But they exist, and we must act upon them. And so we want you to go look to speaker.gov to see how you can find out how you are affected directly in your district, because all of these people, these heroes, they affect how your city, county, township, state meet the needs of the American people. And as I say, it's to address, I just close by saying that the funding is to address the outlays that that political entities have made to address the coronavirus crisis, and those are larger in some communities than others, but all communities have a high percentage of revenue lost because of the coronavirus crisis, and that's part of the distribution of these funds as well. Go into this very prayerfully. Having listened to so many people across the country express their concerns, and to make a best effort to come together based on what we have done before in a bipartisan way, but to go further because the coronavirus has gone farther. With that, I'm pleased to answer any questions. Wait a minute. Natalie Andrews of the Wall Street Journal. I'll come to you next.
Madam Speaker, thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Natalie.
What is your next step after the House, should the House pass the bill tomorrow? The White House has said it doesn't plan to open talks. Will you do more in terms of legislation? Are there any preliminary discussions happening?
I think that our conversation is with the American people. They're feeling the pain more than anyone, obviously, who are saying something like that. It's amazing to me how much patience and how much tolerance some can have for the pain of others. And I do think, and I have confidence, that our colleagues on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of the Capitol, and even down Pennsylvania Avenue know, as Chairman Powell says, to avoid even further economic disaster, and what the scientists tell us, unless we test, trace, and treat, as well as isolate, that we're not going to defeat this, that they know the hardship the American people are feeling, that they need that cash that we're sending out for the time, and hopefully that will diminish as the crisis diminishes. So I'm optimistic that the American people will weigh in and make their views known. And we want to do this working together, predicated on initiatives that have passed in a bipartisan way before. And so our next step is to we pass the bill. We got to do that tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll also be doing something to enable fuller participation in our legislative process by the first vote. First issue to be voted upon is the remote voting by proxy. We won't use the proxy vote tomorrow for this bill, but that is my understanding. But that will enable us to take up more legislation, some on the horizon soon, that we can do, not having everybody present and voting in the chamber, but voting on the record. And so we'll pass our bill tomorrow, and then we'll, again, with all the appeal that we have from Democrats and Republicans, governors, mayors, county executives, and the rest, grassroots organization who minister to the needs of the hungry. I didn't mention, but it really is one of our, hopefully it won't be an area of controversy, but the food stamps, the SNAP program is something that we have done before in bills, rejected in other bills, very needed now. So all of that public sentiment, we think, will weigh in favor of a decision to do more to meet the needs of the American people. Garrett?
Given the history that you laid out and the fact that with Republicans pitching in ideas and participating in this process on the other relief bills, what do you make of the fact that there is no Republican counteroffer, no unified position on their end of any kind other than liability protection and not this?
Well, I'm sure that they'll come with something, or they'll have a comment on what we have done. I have confidence that they will. When they put forth, we were always quick to respond because we are ready. We're always ready. First, we had the families first, families and workers first, and then the Responsibility Act, and because we were always listening and trying to act upon, in the most unifying way, the needs of the American people. So when they did the second, we never expected the second interim, that interim package, because we would have been here with you a long time ago with the CARES 2, or the HEROES Act, because that's what we were working on then. Then came the interim package. They put forth theirs. The very next day, we had our proposal about how we could do the PPP, which we fully support, but to do it in a way that has more transparency, more accountability, and addresses the underbanked communities, smaller businesses of women-owned, Native American, veterans, minority-owned, rural businesses that are smaller, but not having the same access to the banks. In this bill, we don't do funding for PPP per se, but we do have some, I would say, improvements, lowering the number of, taking it down to 10, the number that we would address companies with fewer than 10 people, and expanding the access of nonprofits to the program, with an unlimited number of employees. That was a big ask for many of the nonprofits who work to meet the needs of the American people. Yeah. So we're excited about it because we think we have a great basis that is common ground from the past, and then we have a few issues that we haven't agreed on in the past, but seem to be more urgent now, like SNAP, like OSHA, in terms of the, you mentioned liability, in terms of the protection for workers and employers. We think the best route there is to have strong OSHA provisions that are mandatory. Okay, now where are we going to? Lindsay McPherson, roll call. Lindsay? Okay.
Madam Speaker.
Hi, Lindsay.
My question is, things that were not included, so that some of your the Democrats, for example, have asked for stabilizers included deposit of the
She was asking about
Well, I heard the word stabilizer.
concerns from the progressives, that
Yeah.
stuff that was not included.
Well, we're okay. with that. But in terms of the stabilizers, and that wasn't just the progressive, that's across the board in our caucus, including in the Speaker's office. I'm a big supporter of having stabilizers in the bill. For those of you, stabilizer would be something where you might have in the bill something that says, if by January the unemployment rate is 7% or higher, we would automatically have 26 weeks of unemployment checks, which is something that is really standard fare. But say you put that in the bill. I thought that would be a very wise thing to do. Same thing with FMAP, same thing with SNAP and the rest. However, what I know many years as an appropriator and in leadership did not realize, because we have never spoken in these big terms before, is that if you have a stabilizer in it, that something will happen next January, and then you'll have $400–500 billion worth of unemployment checks going out. It counts in the bill today. It counts in the bill today. Why would it? It doesn't happen, and it might not ever happen. God willing, we won't have that high unemployment rate, but we might. But the CBO, if you say, if people are still hungry by such and such, we want to double SNAP after the first of the year, they count it today. Now, SNAP is a much smaller program, so it's maybe you can absorb it, maybe not. But $400–500 billion, you can. So we were disappointed. So we want to look and see what our legislative, constitutional, and other prerogatives might be to give us more latitude to prepare, even though not spend in the moment, but not have it count in the moment. But I myself was disappointed to learn that we just couldn't go to that place. But I wanted to put hortatory language to say, let us declare that we are prepared should certain things happen. They said that's a stabilizer. So they couldn't do that. But I do think that everybody should know that the actions taken by Congress are predicated on the needs of the American people. And should there be a reason later to do that, we will be there, and we want to herald that and give that signal. But I do think it's more efficient to have the stabilizers, the CBO, notwithstanding. Okay, from the, oh, you already did. Yes, ma'am.
Speaker Pelosi, are you still in active talks with Secretary Mnuchin? Have you guys spoken since you've proposed this HEROES Act?
No, we haven't. My back and forth with Secretary Mnuchin has been, we have been interested in an accounting of the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. We had some concerns about transparency, accountability, some loans that went out that may not have been appropriate. We want to see how proactive the banks, the administration, the rest have been to make sure that the underbanked community has outreach to it so they can participate. So our back and forth is more on those kinds of figures. There are 26,000 loans that went to people making $2 million or above. I mean, excuse me, I say it wrong. 26,000 loans of $2 million or above that went out. Are all of those really appropriate, I would say? Because in order to get a loan, people should know that the criterion, one of the standards for it is that you have to certify that the funds that you're asking for are essential to the sustainability of your company. It could be for half. You could ask for half of what would be a certification. But it can't be, I'm a small business, I know my banker, I'll get a loan. No, that's not what it's about. And if it was not of good spirit in terms of what the purpose was of it, you shouldn't really be asking for that loan. And if those loans were made oblivious to the requirement that it be essential to the sustainability of your company, then that's something that really should be reviewed and perhaps returned. Where we now? We've had all of our, okay, from the room. Yes, ma'am?
Do you worry that the rules change tomorrow will amount to a permanent change to the institution resolution?
No.
And once it passes, when do you plan to bring the full house back?
Well, we'll have the full house back tomorrow, and that's what you have. You have to have the representation of the body, a quorum of the body, in order to change the rules. You know, we couldn't just say we've changed the rules, now come back and we're doing this. I don't see it as that at all. I see it as the wonderful entrepreneurial dynamic of the House for us to say, in a circumstance that was totally unforeseen, unlike anything we've ever seen before, that is not only an economic disaster, but has personal risk, that we would have the opportunity to have remote voting by proxy. And that is for the duration. I think it's 45 days. It has a term limit. I can renew that as speaker, but it's finite for this purpose. And we also say in there, let's pursue and find out what other options there could be to remote voting. Right now, we don't see any that have the viability, but science is moving all the time. I'm a big believer in technology, and perhaps there will be something. But we're just talking about this time frame. There have been other changes after 9/11. It took 3 years for them to come to an agreement on where we would go if some of the members of Congress were incapacitated by such an event. You know, well, God forbid, but incapacitated. Not killed. Killed, you've reduced your quorum. But incapacitated, that you just can't be there. And so they took a long time and negotiated what would happen and how you establish a quorum so that Congress can continue in light of the fact that these members are alive but not necessarily well or able to be in the chamber at the time. So these things take a while. This, I think, we're moving. We had bipartisan talks for a while. There had been some, again, everybody expressing opinions for a longer while. Mr. Hoyer, Mr. McGovern, Ms. Lofgren, Chair of House Admin, Chair of Rules, Democratic Leader of the House, with the Republican Leader of the House and the corresponding chairs, Mr. Cole and Mr. Randy. Randy's last name. Davis, yeah. They had their meetings on a regular basis, and tomorrow we're striving for bipartisanship. We picked up some of the suggestions that they have, but tomorrow we'll have that vote. But it is in keeping with the vitality of the House that we are doing this, not in opposition to the traditions of the House.
So is your expectation that you will use that full 45 days?
Well, God willing, this will go away. I mean, you know, it could be that we don't know. We just don't know. The District of Columbia has just pushed back their shelter-in-place rule. I mean, I would hope that it wouldn't be any longer than that, but we just have to judge at the time. And not when I say we, I don't mean me. I mean the Capitol physician, the sergeant-at-arms, those who make a judgment about when we could lift such a and I think part of it has I know that part of it has a standard that when the physician of the House, the Capitol physician, and he's not of the House, he's of the whole Capitol, declares such a situation to be in effect, that this would be in effect. Hopefully, it's the shorter the better. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Tuesday night, your side lost a special election.
Yeah.
How do you feel that fits in with the broader politics right now? Was it just a case where a personality contest as opposed to healthcare and the kitchen table agenda?
No.
2018?
No, I don't see it that way at all. And I think most observers of the scene have just said none of the elections now because of the unusual circumstances. We intend to win that seat in November, and we don't see it as any referendum on anything other than it was the first time we had vote by mail in the district, almost exclusively, never exclusively because you have to accommodate certain people, but overwhelmingly. No, I wish we had won, but we weren't touting that as something that we're looking to November. Yes, ma'am. I think that's it. One last question. So many women today. Well, some men, yeah.
I know that you have been very vocal about China. Where do you stand? Do you believe China should be held accountable for its initial mishandling of the coronavirus outbreak?
Let me just say that what the president is saying about China is interesting. It's an interesting diversion. Right now, our focus should be on meeting the needs of the American people. I've even said putting aside how we got here in our own country, because we should be using our energy on how we go forward than making judgments about what his administration did or didn't do. We're talking about going forward. There'll be plenty of time for after-action review. And apart from what we do, there'll be scientists and others who will be tracing, rightfully, not only rightfully so, it's urgent and needed for them to trace the origins of such a pandemic scientifically, but not politically. And again, let's keep our focus on meeting the needs of the American people, opening our economy, testing. It's so clear with the health experts and the scientists. We want to get rid of the virus. That's how we can go out. That's what we go to work and not be fearful that we're going to come home and bring something dangerous to our children. And so instead of diverting attention from mistakes that may have been made here, let's just put that all aside and go forward for what we can do, working together for the good of the American people. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear your mask. Thank you all very much. Don't forget to go to speaker.gov to see where you live, how much money goes there, what state you live in more generally, and more congressional district. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes, hon.
Right, she was just trying to.
I couldn't tell. I only
Let me
heard
check
that
with our
before.
folks. I haven't heard of anything, but I also have been in a completely different world too. Okay, cool. So let me touch base and then I'll just shoot you a text.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
of course. Talk to you soon. See ya.